Thanks so much, Ryan. This is really, really great. Exactly the kind of presentation we're looking for. Really a great overview. What we'll do is we'll actually do then let's see the next presentation. Then we'll do all the questions at the end. And this presentation will only take 5 minutes, so we'll have plenty of time. If that's all right with everyone, is that okay with you, Ryan?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay, perfect. So I'll definitely keep it short. So for those of you who've just joined us, unfortunately, Ulyana was pulled into a last-minute meeting with NASA teams, and so sends her apologies. She invited me to step in, fill in for her, and give a presentation on her work. But you can contact her at any time should you have other questions that I might not be able to answer on her work at Ulyana here at scienceinthewild.com. So her work has been focused on the Himalaya, obviously in Nepal, where climate change is really taking a severe toll. Obviously, with the rising temperatures, this is melting the glaciers, which in turn is creating hundreds of small but growing glacial lakes. And as Ulyana says, that these lakes collectively are acting as cancers for the Himalaya. They're eating up these glaciers from the inside out and making some of them melt twice as fast. And just this past summer in June, one of these lakes lost enough water to fill not just one giant Olympic-sized swimming pool, but 42 giant Olympic-sized swimming pools in just 48 hours. So what she and her colleagues are doing is trying to race to understand how these lakes grow, how they form, and importantly, how they're connected to each other subterraneously as well, because they start feeding from each other as well. And so she's been training a local team of Sherpas on how to use marine or aquatic robotics to basically map the lake floors, to map what these floors look like on the bottom, how steep they are, how large they are, what materials these lakes are made of, in order to look for these cracks in the lake floors that might trigger the next floods. And these floods, by the way, are not the small kind of floods at all. In fact, the local villages that live around these lakes refer to these flash floods as Himalayan tsunamis or mountain tsunamis. So they're using this surface robot here, and I'll let Yuli talk just a second.
The USV is off, making measurements in the main basin here of Spillway Lake. So we have another gorgeous day to work with. The nice thing about it being unmanned is we don't have to get ourselves in the water and the boat and get wet or potentially fall into the lake.
So these platforms are programmed, right, pre-programmed to basically follow transects and get imagery back to the base station. As Yuli mentioned here, it's a good thing that you can send out these aquatic robots to do this mapping, because there are regularly avalanches and ice falls that happen, and it's rather unpredictable. And the last thing you want to do is be near one of those, because if you fall in the water, chances are you're not going to be a very happy camper. And the data here, in terms of the data format, is very much, it's sonar imagery that's basically available live, as Yuli shows here.
Here we are looking at the sonar, the depth, the side scan. Pretty cool, yeah, guys?
So you see, this is a very real, humanitarian application in terms of flood risk management, flood risk prevention, and so on. And what my team and I at WeRobotics, and in particular our Kathmandu Flying Labs coordinator, Uttam, are looking to do is join Yuli and her team next year and bring back to the Himalaya these underwater tethered robots as well, the open ROV, so that we can try to see if we can get to the bottom of these glacial lakes and identify the cracks before they're even visible from the surface. And actually, the big picture here and the big plan is not only just to go back with underwater surface water robotics, but also to bring our aerial robotics platforms to the glaciers of the Himalaya and train our local partners, local engineers, and Sherpa on how to use these different robotic solutions so they can be the ones who take the pulse of these glaciers and provide local warnings, early warnings, to the villages that are becoming increasingly vulnerable to these dangerous mountain tsunamis. And all these activities are connected to our robotics labs in Nepal. We call our labs flying labs, and it's headed by Uttam, who I believe is also on this call. So all our robotics labs are headed by local teams managing local projects. And we just got back from Tanzania, where we're setting up our flying labs there, and we were in Zanzibar for several days. And there's a lot of interest there with our partners in State University of Zanzibar around using aquatic robotics to map the coastlines and underwater areas as well. So we're hoping that we'll get to go back to Tanzania with more aerial robotics as well as aquatic robotics moving forward. So that was my presentation. Hopefully Yuli will have been okay with what I said and it was accurate. But again, feel free to get in touch with her directly. I'd like to open it up now for any questions, comments, ideas that all of you who've joined might have for Ryan and myself.